Today is October 29th, 2025, and I'm Kinsley,
I'm Eli.
and we are interviewing Cody Holmquist.
This is our dad. He's 45.
And he was born on February 4th, 1981. He served in the Army.
And he retired as Sergeant First Class.
Okay, the first question we have for you is, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted in the Army in 2003.
Where were you living at the time?
I was born and raised in Joliet, Illinois, and still living there at that time when I enlisted.
Why did you pick the service branch you joined?
It was a funny story. I actually tried to join the Air Force first, but they didn't have firefighters because that was what I kind of wanted to be. So I walked out of the Air Force recruiter, walked into the Army recruiter, and said, "Can I be a firefighter?" They told me, "No, but you need medical experience to be a firefighter, and we can make you a combat medic." And so I enlisted as a combat medic.
Tell me about your boot camp or training experience.
So I went to boot camp in August of 2003 at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. It started off kind of rough. I ran over a drill sergeant on my first day who proceeded to do physical training with me until I vomited on my first day.
Okay, what years did you deploy?
I deployed to Iraq all 3 times. I deployed from 2005 to 2006, 2007 to 2008, and 2009 to 2010.
Where did you go?
So the first deployment in 2005, I was in southeast Baghdad and in Sadr City in Iraq. My second deployment, I went to Baghdad Central for the first portion of the deployment, and then the Iranian border for the second portion of the deployment. And then my final deployment, I was in Iraq as well, but the more northern part. It actually snows up in the northern part.
Do you remember arriving and what was it like?
So when you first arrive into country, you arrive in Kuwait. Kuwait is where all your shipments come in and where all the personnel come in to kind of get integrated first. And I remember getting off the airplane for the first time, and it was about 118 degrees. And when you walk out of the door of the aircraft, you walk out onto the tarmac, and it's literally like somebody has a hairdryer in your face and just kind of blowing it in there. And I realized I was in for it at that point, and wise choices were probably not made.
What was your job assignment?
I was a combat medic my entire career.
Did you see combat?
I did see combat, but through my first deployment, multiple times, multiple combat experiences. My second deployment, fewer combat experiences, but still seen it. And then my third deployment, I was an operations sergeant. I was in charge of all the medical evacuation assets that were in the northern part of Iraq. So I coordinated all those medical assets.
Were there many casualties in your unit?
3 total in my specific unit, but as a combat medic, especially working in a combat hospital, we received a lot of the casualties, so I've seen casualties just about every day.
What were some of your most memorable experiences?
Probably the most memorable experiences was Thanksgiving 2007. A convoy was coming out to deliver a Thanksgiving meal to us. And during that, on their way out to us, they ended up actually hitting an IED. Luckily, nobody was injured, but we never got our Thanksgiving meal. So a couple of us banded together and pulled all the cash we could, and we bought a goat from a local sheep herder. And that was going to be our Thanksgiving meal. Little did we know that that goat was going to cost us some rockets. The goat herder eventually told one of the local terrorist organizations that were in our area when we were on the Iranian border that where we were and what we were doing, and we ended up taking 6 rockets that day. Luckily, nobody was injured. We were actually able to find their weapons caches and everything like that, and it turned into a really good day. And to cap it all off, we had a nice goat for Thanksgiving dinner. So it was a very, very memorable experience.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Throughout my entire Army career, I was awarded 16 different awards. And my most recent one was called an Order of Military Medical Merit Badge for exemplary in the medical field. But probably the one I'm most proud about is my Combat Medics Badge. In 2007, I was awarded the Combat Medics Badge. That badge is for giving care to a casualty while under direct enemy fire.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
So the first deployment, it was simply phone cafes. They would give us little prepaid phone cards, and you'd call home on a phone cafe. If you were lucky enough to be on a camp that had a computer lab, you could use Yahoo Messenger. It was like the first version of texting, but on a computer. Second deployment was very similar. It was phone banks. My third deployment, technology kind of came along, and we had internet in our rooms. And so I was able to use a corded phone in my room to talk to my family.
What was the food like?
MREs are terrible. They should not be eaten. Anything that can, my personal thought is anything that can sit in the sun for 5 years should not be eating. But the chow halls were actually really, really good. Some of the best Thanksgiving meals I had were while I was deploying. They go all out. And then in my second deployment specifically, they hired a chef from Disney Europe, and he came in and changed the menu drastically from what we were used to eating with normal Army food, and we ended up eating like 5-star dishes like risotto, crab cakes, things like that. So we kind of got spoiled in that deployment.
Did you feel any pressure or stress?
Just about every day, in multiple fronts, just because you're in a faraway country with people who want to do bad things to you. In addition to that, like during my second deployment, I had a family at that point. We just had Addison, my oldest child. So having a family at home, being a first-time dad, you're kind of more stressed. And then in my last deployment, even though the combat wasn't as stressful, still being away from your family. And then these two were also at that point not even a year old, or just over a year old at that point. So leaving, and that was very stressful, but not seeing them get to grow up. By the time I came back, they were walking and talking and everything else like that. So,
Was there something special you did for good luck?
there was nothing specifically special that I did for good luck, but as a medic, your day doesn't really start until somebody else has a bad day. So the goal was for me to be bored all the time, because if I was bored, that means nobody was getting injured. So I was the DJ. So as we would get out on missions, I would have my little iPod, and we would connect it to our speakers in the trucks, and I was there to play hype music.
How did people entertain themselves?
During the first deployment, this was when the first Xbox came out. So whenever we would come back off of our missions, we didn't have Wi-Fi. There was no Wi-Fi at that point in time, but we had LAN, or local area networks, and we would connect 4 Xboxes to 4 big screen TVs, and 16 of us would all play Halo for hours on end. So that was our downtime.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Probably the most humorous one was actually just because of its irony. We were in the middle of Solder City. Solder City is about a 2-mile square area with about 5 million people living in it. It's gridlock traffic all day. Generally, when you drive through there, somebody was going to shoot a gun at you. It was going to happen, but luckily we had armor on our vehicles and stuff. But so you're there, you're stuck in traffic trying to work your way through so we can get to the camp. And in the middle of all of this chaos and honking horns and people yelling at each other, there was a smaller stature person with a gigantic boombox on his shoulder who was like freestyle walk dancing through the traffic circle and just having a blast, listening to his music and wandering through. And so the irony of it was just like in the middle of all that chaos, you just had this one dude who's just doing him all day long.
What were some of the pranks that you or others pulled?
We pulled many pranks. Some were good, some were bad. But the more common one was we'd like to mess with all of our new privates once they graduate their basic training and their schools that they went to learn their jobs. When we would get them, we would do whatever we could to mess with them. One of my favorite ones that I ended up also doing some physical training for after it was all said and done was we got a brand new private, and we were doing vehicle maintenance that day. A gunner's turret on a Humvee is the spinning part where the gun platform sits, and once you unlock it, it just spins freely because it sits on ball bearings. Well, we asked this young private to tighten down the turret, and he asked how we do that, and he said, you just get in it and spin it. And so he got in it and he spun himself in a circle just like you would in a chair like this, for about a good 45 minutes. And then he proceeded to go to ask me, Sergeant, it's not tightening. I said, you're probably going the wrong way. Go back the other way. And so he proceeded to spin himself the other way for approximately about 15 more minutes until my leader, my first sergeant, called me by name and said, Holmquist, get over here. And I proceeded to do push-ups for a long, long time.
Do you have photographs?
I do have photographs. Kinsley has some of the photographs that she'll show later.
So do you recall the day your service ended?
I do. I retired August 30th. Yes, August 30th, 2024. So it was just recently.
Where were you?
We were here actually. We moved to 9 times throughout the course of my 21-year career. We started off in South Carolina, then Fort Sam Houston and San Antonio, Texas, Savannah, Georgia, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, Camp Casey, Korea, Washington, D.C. area, and Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Then we ended up in Hawaii at the Schofield Barracks, and then I went to Korea again without you guys, while you guys enjoyed another year in Hawaii. Lucky. And last we ended up here. So this is where I retired at, and with living in all those busy places, that the pace of life around here was very, very peaceful and calm, and a good place to retire from us.
Did you make any close friendships while in the service?
I did. Unfortunately, none of them live in the state of Wisconsin, so it's a lot of times that's communicating with them through text message or Facebook. But throughout your 21 years career, you develop a lot of ties to people.
What did you do as a career after the war?
Once I retired, I spent about 2 weeks on leave. I thought I was going to be like fully retired, and then realized that I kind of wanted to work another job didn't want to be bored. So I first took a job as a patient liaison at the Gunderson Health Clinic in Hillsborough. And then recently I became the financial counselor for the hospital.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Yes. I mean, when you sit at home and you haven't served or you haven't been to a combat zone, you have ways of thinking about it, like how can people do this, or how do people do this? But once you're over there, it does definitely form your thoughts about the military itself, why we do the things we do. How could one person just simply say, like, I'd be willing to give my life today if it means that others can live? It really influences the way you think. And even it makes you more proud about what you have back at home. I remember my first time going into Iraq, when we were driving into Sadr City, they were butchering animals on the street, like at the butcher shops, but they were doing it outside on the sidewalk right there. There was no trash trucks, so they would dump their waste out their windows in between buildings and stuff. So it truly makes you what you have. And then lastly, it really influences the way you think, because like my kids got to grow up all over the world. I never really left the state of Illinois until I joined the military. So, having them experience so many different cultures, from the Hawaiian culture to living in Korea and experiencing Korean culture, living in our nation's capital, things like that, it really influences a lot of the way that you think and how you raise your children as well.
How did your service and experience affect your life?
And it kind of goes back to what I just said. I became more disciplined as a young kid. I was very undisciplined, kind of did what I want, thought I knew the world, but then you quickly realize that you don't know everything and there's a lot left to learn. And that helps you, and kind of helps instill that knowledge into your kids as well as you're raising them. You don't know everything. There's a lot in this world that you have no idea. You're very lucky to have what you have, and you can make sure that everybody kind of understands that.
Okay, lastly, is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
Well, I appreciate you guys interviewing me today.